Yo, what's going on, everybody? We back again for another episode Bodega Cats Comics. So we are back talking about, is the book worth the read, right? So if you want to know what book we talking about, stay tuned to the intro plays.
Bodega Cats Comics.
Meow.
All right, so we back and joined as always by my brother Vic and Joselito. So we are back and we are discussing another book to see if the book is worth the read, right? So we talked about this before. We had an earlier issue or earlier episode where we talked about ASM 300. Was it worth it? The money people are spending on the book, and if the story, I guess, is it worth the value that people are spending on it? Are they spending the money just because they want the book because it's iconic and because of monetary value, or are they buying it because they want the story behind it, right? And we read the story, and honestly, we really didn't feel like it was worth the money based on the story. But investment wise, probably good.
Maybe.
For story, not so much, right? I mean, I'm not going to pay $1,600, $2,000 for that story. It just didn't hold up. Well, for me anyways, and I'm pretty sure the census was that it just wasn't enough. So we're going to do that again. And this time we're doing New Mutants 98. So
New Mutants 98. It's my first time reading it. I was going to share, but the other thing I've been thinking about recently is what is the difference between a key and a grail? And I feel like when someone goes out and says, this is a key, yes, first appearance, first introduction, whatever it might be. We all have our thoughts on what a cameo is, but a grail seems really, really personal, or something that is just revolutionary or like some staple in the industry. So I'm really struggling with that. And after reading this again, I would say, yes, this is either a key or a grail or both, and something that I'm just thinking about. Another thing, try to get this in there real quick. Like, subscribe.
Yes.
Watch the stuff. Check out the old videos. We're doing it for you, and we're doing it to contribute to the community.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I think going just to jump on the grail, kind of time key topic, just real quick. I think that's one of the terms, like, I know everybody throws around keys, they throw around grails all the time and stuff like that. And I feel like when you talk about that, the key issue is basically like, hey, it's a key issue because everybody knows that it's a first appearance of a potential, major character, or at least a character that's well known, and that's their first appearance. So it's a key issue, right? Because we know that this is the first time they appear, and it's usually worth some good money. Grails, I feel like you said, are more personal, right? Because grails could be anything, right? So like for me, this was a grail book, right? This is a book that I was trying to get for a long time. I finally got it, right? And that's personal to me.
Alert.
To anybody else, right? Like that's just like, okay, whatever. It's just another Scotty Young book or whatever. It's not a big deal. But for me, it is a big deal, right? It's a book that I've been trying to acquire. And I think that kind of gets mixed up with like when everybody says, oh, it's a grail. That's more personal. Now, a holy grail is those, basically those monoliths, right? Detective Comics 27, Action Comics 1, AF 15, Amazing Fantasy 15. Those are holy grails, right? Those are the books that are almost essentially out of 99.9% of collectors' reach, right? Most of us will never acquire those type of books. And I feel like those are like that holy grail when you talk about everybody knows them all around the world. You know what the hell those things are, millions of dollars. So I think, there's different class, it's like, okay, holy grail, then you got your grails that it's going to be, personal, more personal to you than anything else. And then key issues, right? Key issues are going to be, that's going to be across the board, right? Hulk 181 is a key issue. The ASM 300 is a key issue. Like these are key issues, right? No matter what, it's going to be a key issue. it might be a grail of somebody, but it might not be a grail of somebody else. It might just be a key issue. So I think grails are definitely more personal, and then key issues are just
start saying all kind of shit are keys. Bunny Mask 3.
There you go. You know what I'm saying? Like it's one of those things, right? Like I think grails are definitely more personal, and key issues just like everybody's going to collect them. Those are books that the collector will get, even if they don't give a shit about the story, they don't give a shit about the character, but they know it's a key issue. They know it's going to be worth something, so they'll just get it.
No, that's real. All right, so let's talk about the book.
Yeah. All right. So the book in question today is New Mutants 98. So published in February 10th, 1991. Writer was Rob Liefeld. Penciler was Rob Liefeld. And I believe Fabian, I always butcher his last name. I don't even want to try to butcher his name. It's like NZA. Like I don't know. Yeah.
The answer to every person who worked on this book is Rob Liefeld.
Yeah. So like I said, he did have a co-creator on this, but like I said, I always like butcher his name.
Who was the other person?
It's Fabian
as an artist.
Nambisky. Like I said, I always butcher his name. That's why I don't even try to say it. But yeah, there's definitely another. He definitely has a co-creator on this.
I think maybe I got to. They didn't give him any credit on Go Collect, so.
Oh, that's messed up. No,
yeah, this is where I pulled the info from. So we got artist Rob, Steve, Joe, editor Bob, and then we have script writer Rob. That is it.
Oh, that's messed up. Yeah. So no, there's definitely another co-creator on this. But so anyway, this is first appearance of Deadpool, first appearance of Gideon, and the first appearance of Copycat as Domino. So we don't figure that out until another issue. Once it turns into X Factors, when we find out that this was actually Copycat pretending to be Domino. And then Domino's first appearance is in X Factor 11. So just little whatever knowledge. So, and like I said, this is, we're going to go through this. We all read this story. I've read this multiple times. Vic just said he just read it for the first time. So it's one of those things where, like, going back to the story, now we're going to say how good the story was. I mean, I know it's the 90s. So, you know, you take things with a grain of salt in the 90s when it comes to like some of the writing back then.
Yeah, listen, I love the 90s in terms of media and content and sitcoms. I didn't read many comics in the 90s, but there's a moment in this one, and I wasn't going to talk to it, but where they have like the adult folks in the room and the children, they'd be like, look at the way Cable's smiling, and all and Cable and Copycat are like, ha, 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 ha. And it's like this really interesting moment. And I was like, oh, that's so 90s. Like, I felt like I was watching Step by Step.
Nice.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. So the first, we're going to do this like we do every time we do the segment. It's not going to be as long. We decided instead of going for 2 to 3 images, finding a key moment in the book and then speaking to it. So the first person is Joselito.
Oh, you would call me when I'm trying to get my shit together. So this is I believe the first appearance of, at the time we thought she was Domino, and then it wasn't revealed. It wasn't until early issues of X-Force where we finally learned it was actually a mutant shapeshifter named Copycat who was impersonating Domino. But for all intents and purposes, the vast reading audience thought that this was her first appearance. And I just thought it was so I was reading the issue, and there weren't many scenes that stood out to me. So I honestly chose this one just because it was like her first appearance, right? And her response to Cable, "Hello, Cable, you called, I came," is actually pretty kind of cool. So I went with that one. I will say this was the first time I've read the issue in many, many years, and I think what's been established from the first episode when we all came together is that between the three of us, I was the one that read New Mutants actually, like, the entire series. And I think for me, this issue isn't important because it's Deadpool's first appearance or Domino's first appearance. It's because it marks the end of the original run of the New Mutants. right? At the end of the issue 98, we see Roberto da Costa. I think it was Richter. He was leaving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Issues 99 and 100 also set up the introduction of Feral and Shatterstar, who had escaped from Mojoverse.
Mm-hmm.
But this issue specifically marked the end of the original run of the New Mutants. And for me, going back to it was actually bittersweet because by the time we open the book, we see that long-standing characters like Mirage, Magic, Magma, Karma, who hadn't been around since like the 50s, Karma, Cypher, Warlock. Cypher was so by the time we open this book, for context, by the time we see this book, all of the New Mutants that fans came to know and love, Magic had been de-aged following the Inferno. Mirage decided to stay in Asgard as a Valkyrie. Cypher, dead. Warlock, dead. Wolfsbane, captured in Genosha. Magma, living in Nova Roma in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
Well, by the time we open this book, all of the New Mutants that fans came to love are gone, with the exception of Cannonball and Sunspot. And we see Boom Boom, Richter, and they came along around the time of the Inferno storyline, and they just stuck around and kind of became like the new Mutants. But even then, folks like Rusty and Skids, who were part of that crew of Richter and Boom Boom, gone, right? Like, so all the mutants that fans had come to love were just gone, and it definitely felt, it felt like it was the beginning of the end. And I think also the other thing that kind of irked me when I read it was there was a scene where Cable is looking at a screen with Domino, and they were assessing previous mutants, and Cable says something like, Mirage is stuck in Asgard, forget her. Magma, she's powerful, but she's not worth the effort. I kind of got the sense that, reading that through Cable, I kind of got the sense I was reading Liefeld's opinion of the New Mutants through Cable, which kind of irked me because it was like he was shitting on those previous characters. Now, I know that sales at the time had started to slump around Inferno. So for context, Chris Claremont wrote the book until issue 54 or something like that. And then Louise Simonson took it over. And I know fans are kind of split on some of her work. Some of them were great. And then some of her storytelling choices, like the way that she ended Ileana's Darkchild saga in Inferno, are a little shaky. But it was almost like Liefeld was shitting on the book as a whole. And it was like, well, your artwork sucks. So I don't know if you got room to talk. So yeah, for me, I mean, going back to this book wasn't so much about, the nostalgia of seeing Deadpool. I could give two shits about Deadpool. I could give two shits about Domino. I wasn't really a fan of hers to begin with, even though fans go, whatever, I don't care. I think it was just going back in time to this period when this book that I loved had ended. And it made way for another book, X-Force, which was an attempt by Marvel to be edgier because it was the 90s. So we saw in the 90s X-Force, right? It was intended to be like this militia of mutants. We had Thunderstrike over in Thor with like the leather jacket and the lightning earring, right? So this was a time period when Marvel was really attempting to be edgier, and that was reflected in comic books like X-Force. You were taking these mutant kids who grew up as friends in New Mutants and turning them into soldiers, which was Cable's intention in X-Force. So yeah, I mean, I think long story short, for me, it was just kind of bittersweet reading this book again and knowing the way that it turned out. Especially because the other characters were so tight-knit and they were a family. And by the time we reopened issue 98, characters have gone, they've died. And then you got a writer who's like shitting on them. I was like, all right, we're going to cancel this book so I can do my book. So fuck off.
Okay.
Oh,
that's good. I mean, I that's one thing that I do like. I like that perspective, right? Because a lot of people get this book only because it's a key issue, right? They only get it because it's the first appearance of Deadpool, and everybody's like, "Oh, this is a great book to have in your collection. You should have this in your PC." But Joselito's point is, for the people who were reading New Mutants from the beginning and they loved the story and they loved where they were going with these characters, and you could see the natural progression of it, and where even in this book, some of the characters that were left behind were like, no, we can't leave them because they're family, right? This is a family, right? We're not soldiers, we're a family. And you could see Cable hold like, oh no, if you're not prepared for war, then whatever, like you're supposed to be soldiers. And obviously that's why Richter takes off. He's like, I don't give a shit. I'm going to save my family, right? So, like you said, it felt like they were like, hey, we need to stop treating them like children and be like, oh, you know what, just kill everybody off. And now all of a sudden, like you said, they're edgier now in X-Force, which I apologize earlier. I'm pretty sure I said like X Factor, and I meant to say X-Force 11 for Domino's first appearance. So
we know what you mean.
I know somebody's gonna be like, "You said it wrong, asshole. You don't know about comics." So
We'll fix it in post. We got it. Everything we need to fix, we're gonna fix in post. Don't worry. We got video editing software.
Yeah, but no. So man, like I said, I do like that perspective. So that was pretty cool to hear that, because it's refreshing, right? You mean you don't hear that very often. So
no, it is, and y'all know me. I know nothing about most of these books, so it's always good to hear that perspective. But also, like when I look at this page, and it's the one that I brought out, and it's funny, I changed the image so that we can see the bottom, because that's where that 90s moment happened. It's like, look, she's making him smile. This is crazy. But I don't know these characters together and in a story outside of that second Deadpool movie. So when Domino's out here throwing knives at Deadpool in the back and then he just falls, is like that's what took care of him. So the Deadpool I know with the super healing factor, who would have made some kind of quip that goes, ouch, that kind of hurt, but not really, and it's in my ass or something like that, isn't here. And the reason I was excited to read this with y'all was because I've always heard that Deadpool wasn't Deadpool until later on. So the Deadpool we know that breaks the fourth wall and does all this really funky stuff comes out later in the 90s. And is part of pop culture now. And if I go to any con, there's 700 of them because it's the cheapest suit to buy, and you can make any add-on like French Toast Man, Deadpool, hybrids. I don't even know what you're gonna do with Deadpool anymore. But I'm tired of seeing people in spandex not wearing drawers. Fix yourselves, people. But the one thing that made me think, oh yeah, this might be him, is he says, I've always wanted a chance to rehabilitate myself, somewhere nice. How about a prison in the Bahamas? And I don't know if he does that because of what they say about the person who hired him or because he's funny. But within the 7 panels he's in, I'm like, there are some interesting points where you can tie. And I'd love to read what Deadpool does between here and whatever became, and however he became the Deadpool that I did read. And then yesterday I called Los to talk about this, and we were talking about the best person who ever broke the fourth wall was Zach Morris. And then Los told me that Rob Liefeld was married to Tori's triplet sister. And I'm like, wait, what if Rob Liefeld stole that idea from hanging out with the Saved by the Bell cast often? There might be something here. So Rob, I'm not coming after you, but I'm going to go try to figure this out, and I'm going to put some timelines together, and I'm going to come up with a Victor Rivera, Deadpool, Zach Morris relationship theory, and that's going to be something that I record all myself and post on this channel. So y'all get ready for that one. I'm going to do my DD, aka due diligence.
Due diligence.
Not Daredevil. But yeah, that's what I'm at with this. I don't understand why Deadpool got taken down so fast. Did he not have the healing factor that I know about? What was going on? And the dude just comes in out of nowhere. And at the beginning of the scene where they're Cable and Cannonball are training, it's like at an undisclosed location under an abandoned mansion that we know is the X mansion. But how the fuck did Deadpool know that these people are down there? Like, I didn't understand that. So
he's a mercenary, that's all.
Yeah, but
that's all. Also, I think so a couple things too, which are kind of tangential to what you were saying, but I'm suddenly remembering that I think Deadpool says that he was hired by Tolliver, and we don't find out until much later that Tolliver is actually Tyler Dayspring, who is like Cable's adopted son from the future. Stripes' adopted son. Stripes? One of those two from the future, who also made his way back to the past, which is so ridiculous. I'm so sick of Marvel time travel.
I'm tired of any time travel.
Huh?
All of it. All time travel is trash.
Also, the book opens up with, God, I don't know why they tried to make them happen in the 90s, but Gideon from the Externals. Like, they were a group of immortal mutants. So you had Gideon. Who else was an external? Gideon. Apocalypse was technically an external. Selene was an external. Cannonball was thought to be an external because there's an issue of X-Force where he dies, and then the next issue, the issue after that, he's revived, and they suspected that he was an external. So we see this issue introduce us to Gideon, I believe. I think it was Gideon's first appearance, and like Liefeld tried to make them a thing in the 90s in X-Force and some issues of X-Men, but like it was like such a 90s and like I honestly forgot all about the externals until this issue because they all got no, that's not true because they reappeared in the Krakoa era of X-Men, but like by the mid 90s, the late 90s, they were all wiped out. Selene killed all of them to gain their power in X-Force. So I'm like, oh shit, the external storyline, yawn. Yeah, so it's also like a weird trippy time moment for me to see that again. I'm like, him again, Gideon. Ugh. Yeah, so that, and then also, I think also this was a time period when, if I'm not mistaken, this occurred when the X Mansion was demolished because, so I think this was definitely after Inferno, which the mansion was destroyed again during Inferno, and then again after that, I think, leading up to issue 275 of Uncanny X-Men when they find Xavier in space. So basically, like at this time, honestly, at this time period, the New Mutants were being unsupervised, which is how Cable really came to be their instructor because first it was Xavier, then it was Magneto, but then Magneto defected again to the Brotherhood, if I'm not mistaken, and then Cable jumped in. So this is a really weird time period for the New Mutants because they had no adult supervision except this like guy from the future who's like, all right, I'm going to be your teacher. And they're like, okay.
He's squatting. He needs free rent. So he's like, I guess if I could use your gym.
Yeah, and they just accept him as their leader. Cable first appeared in the New Mutants. So Cable's first appearance was in the New Mutants. Cable first appeared in the New Mutants issue number
87.
Yeah, 87. Which I'm sure might be another like well sought after book too because of his first appearance. But yeah, there's like this like old guy from the future is like, I'm your teacher now. They're like, sure, right?
We ain't got no other choice.
Right, because all their other teachers were gone. And like this also, I think, just spoke to like how, the New Mutants were like the underdogs. Like the X-Men really just didn't have time for them. They really didn't. And so here comes this guy, like, I'll take you under my wing and train you to be soldiers. And they were at a time when they, I guess, were looking for that guidance because the other mentors, Xavier, Magneto, even Storm used to appear in the book a lot. They just like, bye. So, I don't know.
I was going to say I'd rock with Gideon because at the end of his training session, he was like, get the jet ready. I feel like going to NOLA for some crawfish in the blues. After he like shat on the person sending the robots after him, they're like, these robots are too noisy. Oil them right. No.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah, so this is the panel that I pulled out. This is the panel where he blows through the bookcase in the library. Which again, how did he even know where the hell this shit is at? Which is whatever. I guess to progress the story, you don't need to know how he figured it out. He's just that good of an assassin or whatever. But he just comes through, basically like says who he is, because that's the thing you do. You announce yourself when you're an assassin, apparently. So there's this like weird kind of back and forth between him and Cable, like, hey, I'm sent here to kill you and stuff like that. And apparently he knows his name because obviously he knows the person who hired him knows Cable as well. They kind of allude to that he knows this person as well, and he blames him for some shit that went down like earlier issues. But it just, there's something like again, if you haven't read like the whole story, it just feels like something out of place if you just jump into it at this point. And it's just as far as the story goes, there's not much that progresses it. And like we spoke about before, Deadpool's pretty much in like seven panels or 7 pages. He gets taken out relatively quick. He takes out a couple of the kids, but he gets taken out with a couple of knives to the back, and he alludes to the fact that he does have some abilities because he said, oh, my jaw was broken before, and that's happened to me before, and he mentions things of him getting hurt before. Like it's a commonality, but they don't explain how he heals from these or anything like that, right? So there's no like, oh, quick healing or whatever. Obviously we learned that later on, but there's not. I don't know. there's a reason why I feel like this book was in dollar bins for so long, right? Before he got his own title and before people started reading this new title where they kind of switched them up a little bit, they started breaking the fourth wall with him. They make him a little more funny and, making all these pop culture references. Once they changed them, then that's when people started going back for this book. People weren't going back for the story. They were just going back because it's his first appearance, right?
Yeah.
Because again, nobody was going after this book, right? If you went back 10 years ago, whatever it was, you can find these in dollar bins. People were finding them in dollar bins, and they were just like, oh, look, New Mutants 98, I'll grab this because whatever. They know it was a first appearance, but it was nothing. And back then, it was, maybe a $10 book or whatever, a $20 book. But if you could find it in dollar bins, like, oh, yeah, that is awesome. And then all of a sudden, the shit just shot up because his popularity booted. But, I don't know. I just the story wasn't there's not a lot of memorable moments in the story, like, and we had all spoke about that as well. We just picked random pages because there was no like standout moment, like, oh shit, like, wow, this was if anything, maybe the end where Gideon just pops up in this kid's room and is like, how the fuck did you get in here? That might be the only like cliffhanger, like, oh shit, maybe something's going on. But other than that, like,
yeah,
his appearance, it wasn't that like, oh man, like if he was a master assassin or whatever, like he would have been obliterating everybody and then just barely gets taken out by the luck of a draw or some shit. You know what I mean? Like something, they get lucky and they take him out, but just like, oh, a couple of knives at the back. Oh, he's done. It's like, wow, that was it. Like Domino came in, like, come on. So yeah, it just, it didn't make him that master assassin. Like, you're like, oh wow. Like, yeah, okay. Like if this was Deathstroke, it would have been a little different. So hopefully everybody gets that reference, obviously. But yeah, so I don't know.
For everyone that didn't get the reference, they probably feeling like me right now. Like, no.
I'll also say too, to that point about the book. When reading the book, you didn't know, like you were jumping in and didn't know what was going on, and I think that was the difference between Liefeld and previous writers like Louise Simonson or Chris Claremont. Actually, I'll say Chris Claremont. Because when we first discussed New Mutants number 18, the first part of the Demon Bear saga, that came up again where the both of you were like, well, I didn't really know what was going on. Whereas I was like, actually, like Claremont, one of the things that he did probably too much was that he was verbose in those narration boxes and explained every single person, their powers. And like I knew, and New Mutants number 18 was the first book I picked up, but I knew from that book that previous issues show that Danielle Moonstar was being chased by a bear. That's what I knew, right? And I knew that was like the focal point of that book. Whereas to your point, Carlos, this story, you jump in, you don't know what exactly is going on. And I think that's what differentiates this issue from an earlier issue like the number 18, the Demon Bear saga.
It's funny though, even though I didn't know what was going on, it was enough to start a story. So like y'all shared, it's the beginning of the end in a way. So I feel like this is what's moving you into X-Force. So now that I have that piece of knowledge, I'm like, if you're going to read X-Force, you got to read these few issues before that. We got to know that all those folks die. We got to know that Deadpool's coming. We got to know Domino's on her way. We got to know that Rick's on his way to go get, right? Like all of
and
this.
you got to know Cable's backstory as well, because he comes in at 87 and that's when he basically like takes over. So I mean, those issues from 87 to 100 is basically like Cable's coming out party, and then obviously X-Force number 1 is like, he's massive in the fucking cover, and you could see him, he's basically this big and everybody's like this big next to him. Is like, okay.
Yeah, and even with if you go back to like other trade paperbacks or trade collections of X-Force, a lot of them start with New Mutants number 98. It's typically in the past, trade paperback collections used to be New Mutants 98, 99, 100, X-Force number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? It always started with New Mutants number 98. And I think for that reason, X-Force collectors would always gravitate towards the last 3 issues of the New Mutants, right? Because it does set up the end of the New Mutants. I think, as the first part of a 3-part story that ends a series, it is pretty mid. It's pretty average.
Yeah. All right. Word. So it's mid. It's average. That leads us to our next couple of points. The book, what is it selling for? We know we just recently got news. Hugh Jackman, Ryan Reynolds doing stuff. I think they went out and they bought a rugby team. Is that what they did?
Ryan Reynolds did with the guy who was Always Sunny.
I'm mixing my shit up. I don't know. All these people look the same. Ryan Reynolds is everywhere. I heard he sells cell phones too. Anyway, we got a lot of news. The book's selling high again. So 9.8's going for about 2,000 plus shipping and your taxes. I'm not paying that. We see that those both sales recent that I just saw. 9.6, one went for 9.99, a nice grand, and it was signed by Rob himself. He drew extra feet in it, so he hooked you up.
And then that's also a newsstand copy, so there's a premium for newsstands in the 90s.
Yeah.
So,
and then the 9.6 went for 6.10. And then here's an interesting thing. I'm gonna look up the 9.4s.
Yeah,
one of the 9.4s went for 6.15, which is a little higher than the 9.6.
Yeah,
really interesting. Maybe they were trying to sell it to a friend or something. I don't know. Try to pipe.
Well, it was 3 days earlier.
Yeah,
it was a buy it now, so I'm pretty sure that person was like, "Oh, let me jump on it now before it rises."
Yeah,
and a 9.6 3 days later only sold for $5 less.
Same. Yeah, and then a 9.4 at again $405. So even there with the like percentage wise, I feel like this isn't making sense because that 9.4 should be way cheaper. I didn't look at many raws, but we all know we've been having a conversation about at what grade would you buy a book, and is that grade the right price? So that's just some of what we were looking up. So yeah, Los Joselito, would you buy this book given the storyline at the maximum, which is $2,000?
No, I absolutely would not. I'd pay $1.99 like I paid tonight to read it.
Yeah. So yeah, I am, as far as even story wise, definitely not. I'm not paying $2,000 for this story. I'm honestly not paying $2,000 for this character. I mean, I love Deadpool. I love the new iteration of him, not this iteration. But $2,000 is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that 405 for 9.4 is way better, right? If I'm just looking to have the book, have the first appearance of this character just because I want it, a 9.4 is perfect, right? I mean, it's a near mint copy. Like, and we spoke about this before. That was the benchmark of 9.4 was what everybody was going for before grading companies, brainwashed everybody to have a 9.8 all the time. That's a near mint book. And that's a graded 9.4 for $400. You could probably get a raw copy that looks pretty clean, and you could probably get it for like two and change if you just really want the book, just to have it for the first appearance and stuff like that of the character. But again, that premium going for crazy money, definitely not. No, I'm not paying that much money.
Yeah, no, it's so funny. Like I appreciate the intro of Deadpool in this. I'm not saying I don't like it because it's my first dance with this version of Deadpool. So it's interesting knowing that there's room for growth and seeing the small bits of humor that he throws in there, and that at least there's an evolution of a character. Again, still not the same character to me. I would go and pay on the low end if I were to find a 9.4 for like $350. That would probably be where I go. And if I could find a 9.4 for $350, I'm pretty sure I could find a raw for under $200. So there's always got to be something. Like I went to a store in Pennsylvania this weekend, and I saw the first Harley Quinn for $600. I thought about it. I saw it on the wall. I was like, I might have to get this Batman Adventures, but I just left it there because I would have gotten in trouble if I walked out with a $600 comic book and didn't do a YouTube video about it. So that's where I'm at. No, but yeah. So no. Overall, no.
Yep.
Looks like none of us are paying anything for that book. So yeah, that's the show.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna ask the question again because I ask it every week. What y'all up to? What's happening in y'all lives? Comic book related.
I'm just reading Monstrous right now, trying to get caught up. I got that coming in 8 or so days. So I'm just trying to read up on that right now. It's a very dense book, and I'm reading volume 7, so it's few issues or whatever, issue 30 whatever to something like that. So it's in that range. So definitely need to kind of focus on that. But that's pretty much all I'm reading right now. I don't have anything currently, but I do need to. There's a few books that I need to get caught up on. The Sesame Street one. What the hell is that? The
Survival Street.
I definitely want to read that. There's a few other ones, the 8 Billion Genies and stuff like that. So there's a few indie books that I definitely want to read and get caught up on. As far as like Marvel or DC, I really haven't really read any of those. I just don't want to jump into anything midway. And nothing really seems to pique my interest at this current time for Marvel or DC. I just don't feel like reading 800 tie-ins to whatever storyline is going on right now.
Word. I was gonna say, Survival Street. I think I haven't read the 3rd issue. Tomorrow, one of my favorite covers, I think, is that Wakanda #1 art germ variant that has Killmonger with the Black Panther mask in his hand, similar to how he looks in the show. But Jurassic League 6 comes out tomorrow, so I finally get to read that whole 6-issue miniseries where all the Justice League characters look like dinosaurs. I don't know what the story's about, but I'm going to get the 6th copy tomorrow, and I just want to get my fingers through it because those are all reader copies. I'm pretty sure nothing is going to come of that book. No speculation on it for me. And I think I got some books from last week. I think Dark Ride, which is still like up there. There's a 1 in 25 or whatever variant ratio variant it is for the mermaid cover. They still have that in the shop at the spot we went to. So I'll go check that out. Joselito, reading anything tomorrow?
I gotta check. Yeah, because I just go week by week and see what comes out if I want to buy it or not. Because I'm good for like skipping issues. I'll skip that. I'll come back in like 3 issues. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I'm trying to think. I've been reading a lot of old stuff again too. I think doing this with you all has spurred my going back. I can't speak tonight. It spurred my interest in going back and rereading some old stuff. So I've been doing a lot of that too. Specific runs, Peter David's X Factor run, even his 2000s X Factor series where they were a detective agency was actually a really good series. And then we were talking, was it Us? I don't know. I'm tired. We were Generation X. I was reading. I've been rereading the first few issues of Generation X, with Chris Bachalo and who wrote that? Peter Lobdell? I forget. So doing that too.
All right. Word. Well, it's been great. Don't forget.
Lobdell. Shit, that's his name.
There it is. We're gonna get it before we get off this month. Yeah. Again, like, subscribe. We're here. Doing it up. Bodega Cats Comics. We'll see y'all next time. Peace out.
Yes.
See ya.
Peace. Buying the low.
Bodega Cats Comics.
Meow.